Hello and welcome to a special edition of Indus Special. I am Ayza Omar.
We bring you our continued coverage now of the ongoing situation following India's violation of the line of control. It occurred after dawn this morning after a sortie of 12 Mirage 2000 jets of the Indian Air Force crossed into Pakistani airspace. Now, there are unconfirmed reports that they actually, in fact, dropped a bomb on the the remote area near the town of Balakot. Pakistani sources are confirming that there have been no casualties, but there is conflicting information at this time, certainly from the Indian side. But Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has been very clear, though, this last hour, hasn't he?
He has been very vocal. He's done a special address where he's come out with a statement that has been backed by the ISPR, the army also, where they've confirmed there has not been such a bomb that's been dropped. However, the Mirage jets had to drop their payload, which essentially means that as soon as they crossed across the line of control, the information that we are getting, they had to scramble back as the Pakistani defense system kicked in. Exactly. And I think the thing to remember, viewers, of course, at home, is the Mirage 2000 as a jet. It's a multifunction jet. It's one that's slightly quite old in its history. So a mere mile or two may sound quite a lot on the ground from a ground perspective, but from the air, if they were intercepted by the Pakistan Air Force, as Pakistan claims, then this would have been a very swift reaction, a very fast reaction, removing them from the situation. And given that they did drop the payload in haste, it does seem that this was a very chaotic situation. Now, Indian sources are saying that they claim a number of terrorists were eliminated. That's come from the Foreign Secretary of India, coming out of the ANI news agency, state news agency. They claim that there are terrorist camps. But we must reiterate to the fact that obviously Pakistan does not regard there to be any form of terrorist activity beyond the line of control in Pakistan's side of Kashmir. And of course, if we go back to the Pulwama incident, the thing that sparked this all off, didn't it? Pakistan and the Prime Minister Imran Khan has made it explicitly clear that if India can provide any form of evidence that can prove or show that any Pakistanis had any form of interruption or any form of support for the terrorist activity, that there will be a thorough investigation and Pakistan's participation in it, in the investigation, and a necessary response. India has not produced that evidence. Not produced that evidence as yet, and it's just happened as we spoke. But to get more details and insight on the incident, we have on the line with us Mr. Ashraf Jehangir Qazi, a former diplomat. Mr. Qazi, welcome to the show. Let me quickly ask you on the developments that are taking place. What do you make of this incursion across the line of control and the consequent statements coming from the Foreign Secretary of India saying that this was to eliminate an alleged terrorist camp in Pakistan?
Yes, this is a very serious escalation from India, and it is in complete violation and contradiction to the statement made by the Prime Minister of India just a couple of days ago that he would pursue his objectives vis-a-vis Pakistan diplomatically rather than on a war footing, and that he would continue to try to isolate Pakistan, as he put it, but through diplomacy. And of course he recalled our Prime Minister's statement to him that India and Pakistan should sort of work together to eliminate poverty and illiteracy. So he's suddenly gone back on his change of tone and upping the war rhetoric and war hysteria through these provocative actions. Now, of course, I do not know what the Indians are claiming. I just picked up from you that claiming that they eliminated a number of camps or something on the Pakistan side of the LOC. But this reminds us of the so-called surgical strike that they claimed and never ever produced any evidence to back up what their claims were. And I think it will be very important for Pakistan as soon as feasible to take journalists and diplomats to the areas India claims it attacked successfully on the ground to expose their lie once again. And of course, the violation of the LOC is internationally an act of war, an act of escalation, and we would need to take this up at the United Nations and at all other forums. It is a dangerous situation. Modi is obviously quite desperate because the poll figures in India are turning against him. And in fact, many opposition leaders in India are now beginning to accuse him of having deliberately sacrificed so many soldiers by, arranging or being somehow responsible for an incident in which they were killed in an effort to blame Pakistan, in an effort to ratchet up war hysteria to correct his falling popularity, because
right,
in a state of
Mr.
war,
Ashraf, I'm sorry to interrupt you here. Just bringing into context a little what the Foreign Secretary of India is alleging, and this goes by what has happened since 14th February, the Pulwama attack in southern Kashmir, in Indian-occupied India, in Kashmir. We have seen their tactics before any kind of investigation took place, immediately pointing fingers. Could you highlight how Pakistan reacted then?
Well, Pakistan reacted very sensibly. We said that, that loss of life is always to be regretted. However, Pakistan is not involved. If you feel there's any evidence or anything that you have to make such an allegation against Pakistan, please share it with us. And the Prime Minister said that if there was any action to be taken, he would unhesitatingly take that action. But the Indians have refused to produce any evidence. They have just made an allegation and expect the world and Pakistan to accept this allegation and make demands. And this is, of course, a very, very immature way of going about handling bilateral relations with a neighboring country, particularly since both of us are nuclear powers. But it does seem that this irresponsible action of India is motivated by polls which are showing that Mr. Modi might have difficulty in retaining his job after the forthcoming elections.
All right, thank you. And with that, we have on the line General Javed Qazi. Welcome on the show. Let me quickly ask you on the incursion that's taken place, a severe violation of the line of control as 12 Indian jets have crossed over. The response has come strongly from the Foreign Office of Pakistan. How do you take the response that we've heard from Shah Mahmood Qureshi and also from the army earlier?
I think it's a very serious violation, not only of the line of control, but they have also intruded into Pakistan's territory, because Balakot is part of NWFP, or let's say Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and not of Azad Kashmir. Secondly, categorically, I would like to say that there are no terrorist camps in the area, and it's only the poor people who could have been hurt. Luckily, our Air Force reacted timely, and the Indians had to flee, jetsoning their payload, which fell in open area without causing any casualties. But the very fact that they came across is a very serious violation, and it shows Modi's mindset. He wanted to prove to people of India that he is hell of a macho man and that he has reacted in a very strong manner. Just like the surgical strike, it's another lie told just to impress the people of India.
General Qazi, would it be fair to say that this is merely propaganda, this fictitious claim of terrorist camps existing in Pakistan? Isn't this just a fictitious claim ahead of India's planned general elections? It's election propaganda, no?
Absolutely. There are no training camps, and Pakistan had nothing to do with Pulwama strike. Why don't they accept the fact that it is due to their atrocities that Kashmiris have been driven to this extent that they have resorted to suicide bombing? They're taking their own lives to take revenge. And that's what has happened. The explosive was local. The vehicle was local. The person who did it was local. How does Pakistan come into it? But Modi had to find some excuse, whip up anti-Pakistan rhetoric in
Absolutely.
India.
General Qazi, please do stay with us, as our viewers also. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll continue this live coverage here at Indus News, starting at the top of the hour. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome back to this special coverage of the violation of the line of control with myself, Joseph Hayat, and my colleague, Ayza Omar. Now, just to bring our viewers to speed as to what occurred this morning, Indian Air Force forces crossed over the line of control, violated Pakistan's airspace and dropped a bomb in the area close to Balakot village. Now, our understanding is it was a sortie of around 12 Mirage 2000 Air Force jets. They were intercepted some 2-3 miles over the line of control, and there has been a steadfast and speedily response from Pakistan's Air Force. The result, though, is that this is the first violation believed to have occurred via the air since 1971. To get us more into speed on this, we're going to be joined now by Major General retired Rahat Latif. He joins us on the line. Major General, I'm very keen to learn more, if you could please, if you could bring us to speed as to what Pakistan's response would have been in terms of equipment, what kind of aircraft it's very likely they used to intercept these Indian aircraft that delivered such a swift response and action, and I'm assuming averted further disaster.
You see, we should see that this threat was given by the Prime Minister of India. And in the threat, they mentioned that Pakistan will remember once we go into action against Pakistan in their own territory. And just now to prove, when they got the response from Pakistan's response was very clear. Number one, that we believe in peace process. And any problems that we have between the two countries, we prefer that we should sit on the table, across the table, discuss the problem and sort out the problem. But in case any threat of this nature appears against Pakistan, we shall not be waiting to try and think as to how to react, but we will very boldly, we will react and we will retaliate. This was given in a very clear terms by the Prime Minister of the country.
And how?
The second point is that now that they had said it, so they had to prove it to their own people, because every time when they have a problem, when they have their elections, they get into this rut and they try to apply the same formula as they have been applying for the last 60 years. So now they applied this formula also, and they realized that the threat was very real, and Pakistan was not going to just say for the sake of saying a word, but they have said it because they mean it. Because they should not forget, and I'm sure they will never forget, and nobody will forget, that Pakistan's armed forces today are the battle-hardened armed forces. Every person from the army has gone to FATA for the last fourth time to participate in bringing peace in our country. So they should not forget that it's a battle-hardened force, and for anything that happens, that India does, Pakistan's population, every small word, old or the young man, they all are on one page to participate and fight against Indians. Indians now should not be thinking that we are saying something for the sake of words. No, we mean it, and we have proved it. They came about 3 to 4 miles inside Pakistan territory in the disputed area of Pakistan, which is Kashmir. So they came in, and when Pakistan reacted, they immediately what they did in order to run away with force, with speed, they dropped all the payload that they were carrying to drop at the places which they had selected in their own mind. And this is what Modi has said. This is what said to the public, that we will now pick up the place of our own choosing to teach a lesson to Pakistan. But they have got to know that Pakistan has not only reacted, but reacted violently. So they should now they have changed. I believe they have changed their stance. They have gone a step back, and they are saying that we shall see, because our Prime Minister, that is Imran Khan, he had mentioned when he was perhaps somewhere in India, and he had mentioned that I'm a Pathan, and I maintain what I say. I don't think I have ever heard Imran Khan talking about he being a Pathan. He always talks about that he's a Pakistani, and he stands by the words. That's what's fact. That's for sure. And this is what they said, that he had better see now whether now. This is what Modi said. Well, let's see now whether he stick to his words and we settle the issues on the table or so. Pakistan, we shall never believe what the Indians are saying until such time they sit on the table to discuss the issues which includes the issue of Pakistan. So
the issue of Pakistan, with that, Major General, I'm sorry, could you just stay on the line with us? I'd like to welcome in Lieutenant General Ghulam Mustafa, who's just joining us. Asking you, Lieutenant General, just the idea of the war hysteria that we have seen across social media as well as news outlets in India. BJP is facing a very tough election this year. But let's reflect a little on what Foreign Minister of Pakistan Shah Mehmood Qureshi has already done in taking steps in writing to the UN and also calling an emergency meeting earlier today. The response that Pakistan is showing, how would you rate this and how is this affecting the international spectrum?
One thing is that this air intrusion into Pakistan basically was to test Pakistan's reactions. And means our Air Force was there, I think, just about few seconds that the Indian Air Force was there inside line of control, our side. But still, they came inside, and that is something that Pakistan must and should take seriously. Pakistan's response, again, was a restrained one when our Air Force scrambled and were able to force them back into their own territory. But this is something that has raised alarms. Pakistan's top leadership has just gone through a meeting and they must have decided what has to be done. But this is something that the international community must take notice of.
So, Lieutenant General, in your opinion, is this the first time or an unprecedented event on part of India to violate so blatantly the line of control?
Yeah, this is after a very long time that this happened. Usually, by mistake, sometimes the pilots do venture beyond their own lines. But this time it was deliberate. And this is the first time, I think, in the last 40 years, 30 years that I know that India did it. And this is something that the world must take notice, that two things. One, that India was on aggression, and Pakistan was on the totally restrained response only to the extent that Indian Air Force was forced back.
Whatever doubt there might have been on if this was a straying across the line of control by mistake was completely rubbished by the fact that when the Indian Ministry of External Affairs came out with a statement which was glaring in its absurdity, alleging that there was a terrorist camp that was eliminated. However, photographs have appeared on the media stating completely otherwise. What do you think they were aiming for?
They actually have got themselves into a corner, having raised the expectations of their own nation too high, that they're going to teach lessons to Pakistan. They have to, and they had acted in a way that now they're trying to depict as to the action that the Indian Prime Minister was talking about against Pakistan. That action has been taken. That they have come and they come inside Pakistan, dropped two bombs in an area where there's nothing, frankly speaking, in that area, certain this area. There's nothing other than a few simple locals who cultivate their lands. So what they have done is they have come across the line, they have dropped few bombs, and now they are trying to satiate their public, satisfy them that the action that the Prime Minister had promised that has been taken. But this is not the last one. I think they are going to come again. And this time they tested the response of Pakistan and they found that Pakistan was alert. But yet that one bomb that has been dropped, Pakistan will, I think, retaliate, because that is how Pakistan has shown to the world that if something happens to Pakistan, inside Pakistan, then we will retaliate. The world has seen that this time Pakistan has not done what Pakistan could have. Pakistan could have shot down the Indian Air Force jets when they came inside. Pakistan didn't. And that's something that Indians should note. That is something that the world should note. Next step is now totally in Pakistan's hand. And if Pakistan does something, it is going to create a provocation, and the extradition rather than continue go up. That is where the world must take notice.
Lieutenant General, if I may, I just want to bring our viewers up to speed who may have just joined here for Indus News' special coverage of the violation of the line of control that occurred this morning. Now, we've received in this past hour a statement from the Foreign Minister of Pakistan. I'll just read this to you briefly. The Foreign Minister said that the nation should not be worried over the Indian Act, as the defenders of the country are fully prepared to respond to any misadventure. He said, "It is our faith that God Almighty is the only supreme power." Shah Mahmood Qureshi also said that we are a peace-loving nation and have registered successes in the war on terrorism. Now, just to bring back in our guests on the line, Lieutenant General Mustafa and, of course, Major General Latif. Major General Latif, Shah Mahmood Qureshi there has obviously mentioned the concept of responding to misadventure. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves just too much yet, but what could you potentially predict or see from a military perspective a response to potentially be?
We should not forget that they have been violating the line of control before also, but in pinpricks. If you could recall this, the surgical strikes was one of the slogans that they always shouted, and they were proud of it, that we have done it in Pakistan and also along the line of control. Fine, but it was proved it was all wrong and it was incorrect, and it had never been done. It was shown by the journal who is responsible for the passing of information to the public, took the people along, took the media along, and then showed them where is the surgical slide that they have been talking about. This time, this is very correctly has been mentioned that they had made a the Prime Minister of India had said it in very clear terms to their public that now we are going to strike at the Pakistan at the place of our own choosing. This was the word is used, and they did that, and they have failed miserably. And when they saw that Pakistan was not only ready, but Pakistan could have reacted very violently too, more than this, what they did.
I'll leave it with you there because we've got more guests on the line, but you've given us a very comprehensive insight. We are very honoured to have you on this hour, and you raised some very valid points about Pakistan's resilience, its ability to respond, and the unity of its people. I just want to come back now, if we may, to Lieutenant General Mustafa. What do you anticipate to be the case now moving forward? Because, you know, Islamabad has made it clear they want to follow diplomacy. Nobody wants a war here. But the line of control has been crossed in a very audacious manner. How do you see the response being militarily now?
There are two ways that Pakistan can respond. Of course, the diplomatic response is already on, and Pakistan is talking to everybody concerned and making a point that the world is just now one touch away from what could be a disastrous war in this region. Had Pakistan Air Force gone back and followed the Indian Air Force back, that Pakistan had the right to do. We were in that point in time would have been a war. That has not happened. But Pakistan now has the right. Two things. One, Pakistan just lodges a protest and keeps quiet, and that's it. The second is that Pakistan, now that India has done this thing, Pakistan now has the opportunity and the right to respond anywhere that Pakistan considers, and that could come by way of our own artillery firing across the line of control, our own Air Force going across, and our own air and land forces joining up.
Well, Lieutenant General, you mentioned air forces. I mean, what we can't confirm for sure at this time, but from your expert opinion, what do you envisage was the response? Are we talking JF-17s, F-16s, what do you anticipate was the response last night, or this morning rather?
One is the next time any Indian Air Force crosses Pakistan's line of control anywhere across Pakistan, they shot down. That is, will be defensive, and there still will not be an aggression. The second is that Pakistan Air Force, Pakistan's artillery, and Pakistan land forces, they combined in a strike across the line of control, anywhere from Siachen down to Sialkot, and respond in kind and inflict the punishment that would be much more than what India has done so far. Then the whole thing is going into the escalation ladder. That is something that the world must take notice of, and that is something that Pakistan must consider. But
sorry,
again,
Lieutenant General, I hate to interrupt you here, but stay with us. Let me welcome Mr. Khurshid Kasuri, who's now joining us on the line, former Foreign Minister. The situation is getting tense as the days progress. Today, the dawn saw a audacious violation of the line of control by Indian jets. 12 of them crossed over. Pakistan military and Air Force did not shoot them down. This is something that Pakistan has been very vocal even in the past few weeks following Pulwama attack. How do you see Pakistan's response, and where do we seem to be heading forward in terms of a reaction to Indian aggression?
Yes. As far as this action is concerned, it's basically aimed at the home audience, preparatory to elections in India. And it's unfortunate that any responsible government would go to the extent of jeopardizing regional peace just for the sake of local elections. And as far as Pakistan is concerned, I think the Air Force has once again demonstrated that it has the capacity to respond immediately, because they're not able to get anywhere near their targets and had to scramble back, in fact, dropping their ammunition on the way. So I think... Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Mr. Kasuri, can you hear us?
Okay, so I think the fact that they had to drop their ammunition on the way proved that they could not get anywhere near their targets, and I think it was a height of irresponsibility. So the response from Pakistan has to be really first diplomatic, but I have no doubt whatsoever that the fact that the Air Force already has made a point is partially justified our points made by the ISPR earlier that Pakistan would respond. Now, whether Pakistan reserves the right to respond further, I would not like to comment, because that is something, unless one hears from the Pakistan Army what its position is. But diplomatically, we should immediately get into motion, and I'm sure that's already happened. The foreign minister, I'm sure, is contacting his counterparts, and I think it would be a good idea if the Prime Minister were to contact the leadership in China and in Saudi Arabia and UAE and Turkey, countries that have stood by us. And he's already met with these top leaders, so I think it would be a very good diplomatic move by Pakistan. Once things settle down, I will not suggest at this moment, I had made earlier a suggestion that, and this is before this provocative act by the Indian Air Force, that the Prime Minister himself should go to the major news dissemination centers in the West, which are really London, Paris, New York, and Brussels. And the advantage is that apart from being received at the highest level by government leaders in those countries, in view of his celebrity status,
it is a very interesting point, Mr. Kasuri. Mr. Kasuri, Pakistan has been on the radar of late, especially with its involvement with the Taliban-US peace talks ongoing in Doha since yesterday and onwards also. What we've also seen is Pakistan's been on the economic radar with so much foreign investment coming in through CPEC. But do you think, besides the election hysteria that we are hearing the narrative from explaining why India is behaving this way, what other reasons could it be? Could it be Pakistan's regional importance maybe going up and overshadowing its neighbor?
Well, actually, there could be a multiplicity of reasons. I still feel the most important is to dupe their own public before the elections. And that is what the type of attack that has taken place proves. And nothing has been destroyed, and the ISPR has officially said that there's been no loss of life. Yes, there could be other reasons, undoubtedly. Pakistan has recently had a lot of successes in the realm of foreign policy, particularly as far as its neighbors are concerned, and that is a very important development. And then, of course, the fact that the talks, as you yourself referred, have started in Doha between the representatives of the Taliban and also the Americans. And in fact, the American representative, Mr. Khalilzad, has gone record praising Pakistan for the efforts that it's made in facilitating the travel of the Taliban leadership and in fact facilitating the conference. So I think India thought that this might be a good idea at this time to achieve multiple objectives. But largely, I still maintain it is for purposes of duping public opinion, and they feel that unlike last time, and I think they're wrong, but I think they feel that last time the opposition had said and exposed them and said that there was no such thing as surgical strikes. What they were saying has happened many times in the past. Both people, Pakistan and Indian, have managed such things in the past, but they made a big thing out of it. This time, near the elections, they feel they'll give a shut-up call to the opposition in the name of patriotism. But in my own opinion, if the ISPR does what it did last time, that is exposed the hoax and take the international media to the sites that the Indians allege they have attacked and show the truth, then I think actually the Indian public opinion would also understand that this was no better than the last time.
It's interesting, Mr. Kasuri. Sorry to cut you there, Joseph. I'll just let you back in. Very quickly, India has a history of these alleged surgical strikes, as it calls it. Just 2016, we saw a similar incursion across the line of control in Pakistan. In 2015, it put up another such show of crossing over to Myanmar and allegedly killing 38 Naga terrorists, which later on was proven to not have been true. In fact, that camp where the bombs dropped were completely evacuated.
Yes, I remember that incident. And so it's not the first time that India has been staging such hoaxes, only that the Myanmar was effectively exposed. And also by the Indian army, Indian media at that time, after the Myanmar government repudiated that. Yes, I think you're making a very valid point. But I think the last attacks, the so-called surgical strikes, were meant similar purposes because Prime Minister Modi has been saying that the previous Congress government was weak, the previous Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was weak, and that he would teach Pakistan a lesson. But there have been so many deaths, and there have been so many suicide attacks, and there have been so many Fidai attacks in Kashmir because of India's repression, that India now wishes to turn the attention away from and wishes to make the international community believe that these are acts of terrorism. In fact, there is absolutely no doubt that there is no external elements now, and in fact it's the Kashmiris. And as far as this young man who laid down his life is concerned, there have been reports, not by Pakistani media but by Reuters, that he was humiliated. Earlier his brother had died or cousin had died, and then at that time he was humiliated in a most indescribable way, and he therefore was waiting to avenge the insult that had been heaped on him. They have a large number of people have been blinded through pellets. So I think India finds it difficult, for effectively they've lost the people of Kashmir.
Well, Mr.
And
Kasuri,
as Mahbooba Mufti pointed out, they probably want Kashmir without the Kashmiris. Now, it's untenable, it's unsustainable. This position is utterly impossible to maintain before the international community.
Mr. Kasuri, you raise a very point there about the way in which, Indian Kashmiris are being treated. But I want to bring in a bit of a curveball for you, if I may. In the statement we've seen from the Foreign Office, it's clear that there's some cooperation at the moment going on between Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Pakistan's Foreign Secretary, Foreign Minister, and the UK Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt. There's talk of trying to get the UK to influence the other partners worldwide to try and execute restraint. What's the UK's agenda in this?
Sorry, are you asking me something?
Yes, sir. For Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Pakistan's Foreign Minister, has issued a statement, as we know, this morning, and a part of that statement came out that there is some cooperation going on between Pakistan and the UK, trying to get the UK to influence global decisions surrounding responses to this conflict. But one has to ask, what is the UK's interest in this situation?
Well, I don't know what he said, because you're informing me that they are saying that the UK government is taking interest.
Yeah, they're said to be, I quote, monitoring the situation.
On the basis of my experience, I can tell you the US is also doing so, because they normally act in concert. And when I was foreign minister, sometimes the two ambassadors used to come and see me together. Oh. And they normally coordinate their policies on South Asia, because the United States does realize that the UK has greater experience in South Asian affairs. So that's an important statement the foreign minister's made. And I think it's a good move because United Kingdom understands the situation. Furthermore, US has a very large Kashmiri population, British citizens of Kashmiri origin. So I think it's a very clever move, and I think United Kingdom is in a position to play a positive role.
Obviously, it's early hours now in DC, so we haven't really seen much of a reaction at all out of Washington just yet. But you raise a very valid point there about how the UK and US co-opt on often their response to Pakistan. What do you think Washington's going to be saying? Because Trump has been up and down with this current administration. He was critical of Pakistan initially, then he backtracked on it. Now he's kind of pro the agenda and he's saying he'd like India and Pakistan to get on. From your expert experience, how do you foresee President Trump's administration responding to this now?
President Trump has already said in the last couple of days, he's made 2 or 3 tweets, and in fact, more important than a tweet is he was responding to a question by the media which had been anticipated because he gave a longer answer than usual. Normally his tweets are off the cuff and you can't take them seriously. But when he was asked this question, he said, yes, our situation in the past was not good, but it's improved with Pakistan. Pakistan's playing a cooperative role. And today, Mr. Khalilzad has said that Pakistan has played a very positive role in enabling the conference in Doha to be held. So I think taken together, one can assume that despite the fact that the United States seems to be pulling out of not just the Middle East, but what they used to call the MENA, Middle East, North Africa, or an extended Middle East area, and they used to count Pakistan as a part of that because I was called to some of those conferences. But in view of Afghanistan's situation and the role that Pakistan is playing, I think United States would like to use Britain because United States and India are strategic partners, and they were playing good cop, bad cop. The National Security Advisor the U.S. National Security Advisor was quoted as saying by the Indians, not by the United States, that India has a right to self-defense, whereas President Trump, luckily for Pakistan, was singing to a very different tune. So I can understand this good cop, bad cop, trying to play both sides, but the United States has its own interest in the area.
Absolutely.
And therefore I think that United Kingdom would probably have complete backing of the United States.
It sounds to me then, Mr. Kasuri, that kind of both sides are playing it safe in their own ways. Do stay with us, Mr. Kasuri. And for viewers at home, we're going to head to a quick break. We'll see you after this break.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching a special coverage on Indus News with me, Ayza Omar, and my colleague, Joseph Hayat. Sorry about that. What we've seen in the early hours of Tuesday is a violation of the line of control as Indian jets, 12 of them, crossed the line of control into Pakistani territory and had to retreat immediately after response by the Pakistani defense. And now we are seeing an escalation of tensions that had already been on the rise between these nuclear armed countries. We are also seeing an international response trickle in as the West catches up with what has happened on the line of control between Pakistan and India. To get views from our guests, let me welcome Major General Ejaz Awan joining us right now. Major General, talking about how we move forward in terms of the international community, what can they legally do to respond to such a violation?
Well, thank you. There is a lot of confusion and a lot of dust being spewed here and there, and it's really very difficult to discern what has actually happened on ground. On one hand, Pakistan Army and Pakistan sources are claiming that there was a violation of line of control at one point, and they have dropped few bombs in an area which is uninhabited. No military target, no civilian target has been engaged, and no damage done on ground. To the contrary, on the Indian side, they are claiming to have struck at 3 different places in 3 different areas, and they are claiming to have killed over 300 so-called terrorists, and they have struck a terrorist camp. Now, these are 2 absolutely extreme positions being taken by Pakistan and India. And me sitting at home here cannot say where lies the truth, because unfortunately what I studied as a student of military history and student of strategy, truth is the first casualty in war. So this kind of an escalation, somebody is lying somewhere. So if India is lying and trying to escalate the situation, it's too bad. And if the damage has been done and we are trying to hide it, again, it's too bad. So
if you were to, Major General, to highlight a little, sorry to interrupt you there, we see this tensions following what happened on 14th of February, where over 40 CPRF soldiers were killed in a suicide attack in Pulwama. But we're also seeing BJP, which is Prime Minister Modi's government, having been beaten raw by their poor performance and expecting a really tough competition in the elections. How much of this war hysteria, could this be just electioneering?
Well, it seems to be electioneering. It seems to be externalizing the ongoing struggle of the Kashmiris for their right of self-determination. They are trying to downplay the actual struggle which is on in Kashmir, and then they are trying to externalize and link it with Pakistan-supported terrorism. So this is the narrative which they have taken, and the factual position is they are trying to downplay the ongoing movement in Indian-occupied Kashmir. But leaving that aside, there was a suicide bombing. 40 people died in Kashmir. Our narrative is entirely different. We think it is indigenous and it is in response to the atrocities being perpetrated by the Indian army in Indian-occupied Kashmir, whereas they say all is well in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Now, logically, when we see it, have the 95,000 Kashmiris been killed when all is well? 11,000 women raped when all is well? Pellet guns being used when all is well and there is no violence in Kashmir, there is no protest going on, there is no indigenous struggle going on, and students pelting stones on their armed forces.
So Major General, let me ask you this. What is interesting in this entire turn of events, as we've seen, is that the Prime Minister Imran Khan last week came out after the Pulwama attack, and the remarks that the Prime Minister Modi had continuously made, pointing the finger at Pakistan, was that we are cooperating with you as soon as you show us any intelligible evidence where Pakistan might be involved or any stakeholders within Pakistan might be involved. If this alleged terrorist camp that India seems to be so confident they have eliminated and giving a death count of 300, which we have yet to come across evidence for, if it was such a case, if there was a preemptive strike, couldn't they have communicated to Pakistan directly? I mean, I believe there was backdoor diplomacy underway.
Well, they would not. If they decided to strike across line of control, they would not communicate that we are going to do it, because certainly across line of control.
I'm sorry. I must not have come across clearly. I'm not talking about the attack across the line of control. If there was a preeminent threat that they allege now they were facing from this terrorist camp, which was on Pakistan's side of the line of control, could it not have been better for them internationally, as well as their relations with Pakistan, to have communicated the threat, especially since Prime Minister Imran Khan has continuously shown cooperation and willingness to fight, to work with India on this?
Ayza, it's a very uncomfortable and very unfortunate situation that India has no evidence of involvement of Pakistan inside India. This is the sixth time they are blaming Pakistan. And every time they have failed to provide an evidence, may it be Pathankot, Mumbai, attack on Parliament, Uri incident, and are now Pulwama. They have not been able to give us any evidence and prove the involvement of Pakistan. That's why they are resorting to only propaganda and exterior maneuver, and they are trying to link Pakistan support with the indigenous struggle in Kashmir. They have no evidence whatsoever. If they had any, naturally they would have shared it with Pakistan, and we could have sat across the dialogue table and sorted it out. And even now, Pakistan Prime Minister offered, if you have an evidence, we will take charge of the situation. We would like to probe and investigate, and take the law would take its course. Should you have an evidence, please share it.
Exactly, so Major General Awan. And interestingly enough now, there is a new line coming India. This has come from India Today. And they're revealing that apparently India's defense minister and its national security advisor were present with Prime Minister Modi in a situation room in his cabinet, present to witness this attack taking place. Yet India's Defence Ministry itself was not aware of the actions and the mission, dare we say, until later this morning. So is it not clear now that this is just merely a political move for political gain for Narendra Modi's BJP party?
That's what precisely I am saying. I am not sure what the truth is. If I listen to the Indian media, there is a complete war-like situation, and they are showing the strikes, though they are animated, not the actual ground position. They are showing animated strikes. There are few analysts sitting. They are claiming 300 casualties across the line of control in Pakistan area. I mean, this is one situation that the media is trying to paint to the home crowd or the right-wing voters of Narendra Modi. This is one situation. On the other hand, the Ministry of Defense is denying it. Ajit Doval, the National Security Advisor, and the Defense Minister, they are sitting with Prime Minister Modi, and they are denying that we have no knowledge of this strike. How is it possible that the Air Force strikes and they have no knowledge? So they are again lying. Unfortunately, the strike has taken place. Indian aircraft did violate line of control. They have dropped bomb in an area, and fortunately there is no damage on ground. This is what is our claim. So this is what is being shown on our television. So it is, as I said initially, it's very difficult for me to comment who is saying what and who is trying to over-exaggerate the situation, or on the other side, who is trying to underplay it.
No, you're absolutely right,
Major General. This is a very
unfortunate
situation, and if they have violated line of control, then we reserve the right to pay them in the same coin as and when it is needed.
No, you're absolutely right, Major General Awan, and we should, of course, if you've just joined us here at Indus News, this is our continued special coverage following the pass of the line of control. Indian Air Force crossed the line of control, the first air violation reported since 1971. It was believed to be a sortie of 12 Mirage 2000 fighter jets. They dropped at least one bomb. There's some speculation it could be several bombs near the village of Balakot. This is a largely uninhabited area, but it was a major violation. Pakistan reportedly responded and intercepted these aircraft. And we've also heard from the Foreign Minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, this morning, saying that there will be some kind of response to this misadventure. But this isn't the first time, of course, things have flared up, is it, Ayza? There's been so much drama the last few weeks.
Especially after 14th February Pulwama attacks. But then, like we spoke to our guests about this also, these elections are critical for BJP. They've already lost a lot of seats in where they were in government. They're losing a lot of favour. So it could be just them going too far with their electioneering. But let's find out more of what our senior editor, Mr. Ijaz Awan, journalist, joining us, Mr. Ejaz Haider, joining us right now, has to say. Mr. Ejaz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So what is your take on this violation of the line of control, the sortie of 12 jets crossing over, and Pakistan's subsequent reaction?
Okay, so firstly, we still do not have enough information, especially technical information regarding this incursion. So therefore, what I'm going to say is based on available information. And starting with that, I do not think that there was a sortie of 12 Mirage 2000s involved in this attack. One has to understand that if they wanted to come in and give surprise, they would not send a sortie here, because there's an entire radar coverage and also the AWOCs that we have. And therefore, they would know that PF would scramble in the event that they come in those numbers. So that is point number one. Secondly, please make note of the fact that incursion or violation is not necessarily through an aircraft. If you lob an artillery shell across any kind of boundary, may it be the international border or the line of control or the working boundary, that is a violation of that line. So the concept of violation has to be understood. Now, allied with this is the point that the possibility is that they used a standoff capability. And standoff capability essentially means that you attack a target area in a way which allows the attacking personnel or the aircraft to evade defensive fire. In other words, to translate this into English, this really means that their aircraft did not cross the line of control. They were at a distance inside their own territory, and they attacked a particular target from there. Once again, since we do not have enough information and technical parameters of the attack, this is something that I am speculating on the basis of the fact that, as I said, if 12 Mirages had come in, then the possibility of their going back, all of them going back, was very slim.
Ijaz, you raise a very valid point about the technicalities, and you, for one, certainly amongst our team, are the most knowledgeable when it comes to the technicalities of both forces. So it'll be very interesting to see as this develops. Interestingly, though, I must mention there is some new lines coming in actually from occupied Kashmir. Reportedly, the homes of Yasin Malik, these are the freedom struggle leaders, Yasin Malik, Shabir Shah, who is of course in jail at the moment in India, and the son of Syed Ali Jalani. Their homes have been raided. There is action being taken by the National Investigative Bureau of India. So perhaps this is a distraction from a wider point, or it could be related. We will find out as we come back. Hello and welcome to Indus News' live continued coverage, special coverage, following this morning's violation of the line of control. It follows Indian Air Force's aircraft crossing into Pakistan's airspace in beyond occupied Kashmir. We have reports that just before dawn this morning, the aircraft crossed. There are some suggestions it was a sortie of up to 12 Mirage 2000s, but at the very least, we are aware at this time that Indian Air Force aircraft crossed into Pakistan airspace and executed a bomb over Balakot town in a very remote, uninhabited area. There are no reports of casualties at this time or any loss of life for the now, but it is becoming clear that this is a violation. It's a very big violation. This has not happened over airspace since 1971. There's been a quote and a statement come from Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi this morning. He says that the Foreign Ministry and together with the nation will be expressing no concern over this Indian act, as they regard themselves as the defenders of the country, and they are fully prepared to respond to any misadventure from India. He said that our faith is in God Almighty and that He is the only supreme power. He also said that we're a peace-loving nation and we have registered successes in the war on terrorism. Meanwhile, India has come forth with a lot of false allegations regarding supposed terror camps in Pakistan. Now, Pakistan has completely rebuffed this, in line with Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's earlier statements this week in response to the palm oil incident that occurred just over a week ago. He has categorically made it clear that if India can produce any evidence whatsoever, that Pakistan will fully comply and support any investigation to seek a solution to this. As of yet, India has not responded to those earlier requests, nor have they responded to this particular threat. We also have that they've presented themselves with this strike. Equally, we're getting mixed sources coming out of India, mixed lines, some supposed suggestion that the Defence Minister and National Security Advisor to Prime Minister Narendra Modi was supposedly present in a war room, a situation room, as this occurred, and that Defence Ministry officials weren't aware until later in the morning. And we also have suggestions that there are raids occurring in occupied Indian Kashmir of freedom struggle leaders. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by my respected colleague, Waqar Rizvi, here with us. It's been a very busy morning, hasn't it?
Yes, it has, Joseph. And of course, a huge Indian escalation this morning at dawn there in Azad Kashmir. We do still have Mr. Sardar Asif with us here at Indus News. Mr. Asif, we appreciate you standing by and joining us, of course, as the developments continue to flow in. What are your thoughts at this point in time about how Pakistan has reacted and what in the Indian reaction and claims continue to be?
Well, you see, first of all, the Prime Minister Modi has been threatening some sort of a strike, call it a surgical strike or whatever strike he has in mind, since the last few days. And he's been obviously under a lot of pressure from in domestic opinion. and particularly the Indian media, which is turned very aggressive against Pakistan the last few years, we have noticed.
Yeah.
So under all these pressure that he is under, it was expected that he would do something. Some form of intervention was expected from him, and we in Pakistan people thought that there will be some sort of a surgical strike, whatever that means. Nobody seems to be very clear what Modi means by surgical strike, whether it's going to be an air strike or a ground strike or a artillery strike, or what sort of a strike that he's talking about. The last time we talked about a strike, it turned out that there was no such strike on this side of the LOC, because the United Nations peacekeeping observers, they observed no such incident having taken place.
Mr. Ali, is it fair to say that this is merely political point scoring occurring ahead of May's elections? Because, it's like these false accusations coming from India over supposed alleged camps that don't exist. There is this strike that doesn't have any particular impact in the local area beyond, thank God, frankly speaking. It hit an uninhabited area. So is it fair to say that this is just all a smokescreen for political point scoring ahead of May's elections?
Well, you see, a lot of people in India now, a gentleman recently accused of some very important right-wing Hindu leader, has accused Narendra Modi's government of having triggered something like that. So a lot of voices are coming out of India and out of occupied Kashmir, which seem to put the blame on Narendra Modi on the events that took place, which resulted in this, killing of so many Indian soldiers, sadly. Now, this posturing is going on. He's in a corner because the kind of reaction that he wanted from the Indian public, that reaction has not come. And instead, questions have been thrown at him again and again from India itself. And secondly, he was hoping to isolate Pakistan, which quite frankly, he can say what he likes, but the isolation hasn't taken place as we understand the word isolation. So what has taken place, nobody knows. Was there a surgical strike? We are unable to confirm that. The armed forces of Pakistan, they have said that they have no such evidence. Who has evidence of this? And if there is evidence of it, then the onus of that lies on Narendra Modi's government or their security establishment to provide that evidence, credible evidence to the world and to us that such a strike has taken place.
So, Mr. Ali, I wonder what you make then of the Indian game plan at this point in time then, because it's one thing to say that this is all about internal politics in India, but it's quite another to escalate the situation with Pakistan to such an extent, isn't it?
Yes, as it is an escalation, undoubtedly, and this is something I've been saying for a while, that the escalation will take place. Now, the issue is only one. How far this escalation can go, and how high on the ladder of this escalation Narendra Modi is prepared to climb. And does he want a war? Ultimately, the big question is, does he want a war? And my own feel on this is that he will take it to some point which is convenient to him and to the Indian establishment. After all, the war will be fought not by Modi, but by the armed forces of India. And they know the implications of any future war between India and Pakistan, how dire and how serious those implications can be. So I don't think that the Indian establishment, the permanent establishment of New Delhi, is going to allow him to go beyond a certain point. which might trigger Indo-Pakistan conflict. They will let him play the game of posturing for a while, but at some point he will be stopped.
I mean, Mr. Ali, my question to you is, you know, if you were sat in Shah Mahmood Qureshi's place now as an active foreign minister, obviously a retired foreign minister of Pakistan, if you were the current foreign minister, you know, you've got the prime minister very clearly saying we don't want any kind of war or escalation, that any potential war between two nuclear sides he's described as suicide. The foreign minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has made it absolutely clear that nobody's looking for conflict, but rather de-escalation. But obviously this is falling on deaf ears for now. So if you were in office right now, what would your response be?
Oh, I think Pakistan has taken a correct position. First of all, Prime Minister Imran Khan spoke very candidly and very clearly that we are prepared to talk with you. We are prepared to help you in an investigation. We are prepared to, you know, in every way be available and to assist you in every way we can, because we do not condone such an action that costs the life of so many Indian soldiers. We do not condone that. But if he also said, and I think that was very clear, he said, if you retaliate, we won't even think about it, we'll hit you back. Now, I don't know whether Pakistan has hit back or not, but I think he is going to come under pressure as well. That, well, here is Narendra Modi, he's intervened and he's done a surgical strike and he's got away with it, and what have you done about it? So he is going to come under pressure as well. So the pressure is on both sides now. And I think the world will prevail. The world will prevail upon Modi. That he has to see, see sense and not escalate it to a point of no return. I think the world is going to intervene in favor of peace between the two countries.
Mr. Ali, I wonder what you make of then the internal, if we may just go back to that for a moment, because I know it was mentioned earlier in this discussion, about the internal domestic Indian politics and about how Modi and the BJP are possibly trying to gain more votes through such actions. You know, the Congress Party, Shiv Sena, others have already within India pointed out that that's what's been happening since that incident took place in Pulwama, this anti-Pakistan hysteria within the country. Do you think that this might actually backfire?
I think the whole thing is backfired. I think the Indian public is not supportive of a war. It's only the Indian right wing, the Hindu right wing, the people like Thackeray and extreme right wing parties, Hindu right wing parties who are trying to escalate the tension. But as far as the centrist parties and the left-wing parties, none of them has spoken in favor of any surgical strikes or in favor of escalating the tension between India and Pakistan. In fact, they have been critical. And Congress Party has actually said that Modi is trying to use this incident to propel his election. And he should not do this. This is immoral. And if I remember correctly, this is the language that was used. So the moderates in India have opposed this stance of Modi. The almost entire occupied Kashmir leadership has opposed the escalation of this tension, and the whole world is calling for caution. And some are saying that the solution to the India-Pakistan problem lies in the resolution of the Kashmir dispute, and that too is an idea that is being pushed forward, including by people like Donald Trump, who has, without saying so, without mentioning Kashmir, has said that we will try and sit and negotiate between India and Pakistan and mediate some sort of a peace between them.
Well, Mr. Ali, it's interesting you mentioned Donald Trump and obviously other parties, because that's a question I wanted to come to you with, actually. You know, whenever we've seen conflicts in the past between countries or invasions, etc., whether it be, for example, if we take the Iraq War, it wasn't just the US, it had its allies rallying up behind it. Do you regard or believe in any way there are any other nations rallying up in support, perhaps secretly or behind some kind of subcontext, behind India backing up this kind of action?
I can't seem to think of any country that backs this kind of action by India. I think the whole world is pretty clear that this is a dangerous part of the world. Both countries have very highly trained armed forces in very large numbers. They are highly equipped, very well equipped. They are nuclear equipped. They are missile equipped. And any kind of war that happens here in this part of the world will ultimately result in a nuclear exchange. And nobody in the world wants a nuclear exchange, and not only in South Asia, but anywhere else in the world. And nuclear exchange would be suicidal for both the countries and would be extremely dangerous for the rest of the world. So I think the world has recognized this, and that is why the focus of attention is Mr. Modi. It is not Imran Khan. It's not Pakistan that is being blamed. It is Mr. Modi who is being advised caution. And he should open his ears a bit and listen to all these sounds which are coming out from the rest of the world, and take heed of all this. And that's all we can hope for.
Mr. Ali, I wonder how large a factor do you think the Kulbhushan Yadav case is in all of this? Because, the Indians brought forth a complaint, as you well know, in front of the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, that essentially has fallen apart for all, argument's sake. I wonder if this can also be then argued to be seen as a deflection of sorts, really, about that very huge egg on their face really now. Since that Yadav case was brought to the ICJ, Pakistan presenting its arguments very strongly there. Is this deflection, do you think?
Yes, I think the Indian case has not been going too well in The Hague. And I'm not a lawyer, but whatever little I've heard or read, the Indian case does not seem to be convincing. On the other hand, the Pakistanis are very sanguine, because their narrative is being acceptable, that the Indians are trying to destabilize Pakistan by sending the specially trained agents to do acts of terrorism in Pakistan. So I think the Indian government and Modi is under pressure on that account too. And if there's a verdict against India, although it's not the decisions of the International Court are not binding, but what is to stop Pakistan from implementing its own laws and giving capital punishment to a spy? There's nothing stopping us. So they are under pressure, and the way to deflect that pressure is not through starting to squeeze us more and to pressurize us even more. Yeah. The way out of all this is to negotiate with us, to sit down with us. And
okay, Mr. Ali, I do apologize for interrupting you. We just want to add another voice to this conversation.
Okay.
We're joined by former Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi, who is joining us now. Ambassador Naqvi, of course, as always, we appreciate you taking your time out to speak to us here at Indus News, and of course, especially on such an important day. I'm here, of course, with Joseph Hayat as well, my co-anchor, who is also joining us. Joseph, did you want to start off with Mr. Naqvi?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's very interesting, isn't it, Waqar, to get the diplomatic perspective now in this, because there doesn't seem to be, as of yet, any military response. That's not to say it may come, but there's certainly a lot of talk about what will Pakistan's diplomacy be. Will the mission continue to be that of calling for peace and wanting to resolve this with India?
Yep.
I mean, if we bring in Ambassador Ali Sarwar, Ambassador, you have a tremendous experience when it comes to diplomacy. What would you move forward from now? Because, you've got this continued ignorance to the fact that Pakistan is continually saying that it does not want to have any kind of war or conflict with India, yet we've seen an act of aggression early this morning. And as Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Pakistan's foreign minister, rightly said yesterday, this seems to occur every time Pakistan is on an upward trend, as if it's going forward and positive things are happening. Is it all about the ICJ case, as we were just mentioning, or is this about a smokescreen towards something else?
Number of factors play a role in whatever developments take place. And I think the issue of what happened in Pulwama cannot be, ignored, because Indians went on a high horse. They went up in their rhetoric to say that the Prime Minister Modi and others, that they will take very strong action against Pakistan, attributing the whole incident to Pakistan, which was again, very prejudiced, because unless a full investigation takes place, how can they attribute it entirely to us?
And voices have been saying consistently this was an indigenous, a part of the indigenous population of Indian-occupied Kashmir. This is, in many people's views, nothing to do with Pakistan to begin with.
Yes. But, we would be welcome, we would be open and welcome any investigation that might be undertaken and jointly by our two countries, which is what we had offered. Now, that's one. The other is the ICJ case. So there are various factors that go into it. But what we have to look at the moment is how do we respond to it. Now, I personally feel that the response should be direct request to the Security Council that an Indian plane trespassed into Pakistani territory and dropped bombs. Now this dropped the payload of the bombs. This is aggression. This is unwarranted, uncalled for action against the territorial sovereignty of Pakistan. And this is it is a fit case for being taken to the Security Council right away. Once that is done, and they will have to meet, because that is their obligation under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. Then, once they meet, then a discussion will follow, and in the meantime, Pakistan can also, decide whatever action it wants to take. So, there has to be a first diplomatic démarche and subsequently any action on the ground.
But I wonder, Mr. Naqvi, if I may just come in for a moment, I wonder if you believe that at this point in time that anybody at the Security Council, and I'm talking specifically, if I may, about the United States, do you think the U.S. would actually, in this point in time, go along with a call, as you've outlined it legitimately, of course, to come from the Security Council for restraint in the fashion that you've described it? Because, I wonder, after Trump's latest statement about what occurred vis-a-vis Pulwama, it wasn't seen as the most helpful statement, was it? And I wonder if that is sort of a description of where the U.S. stands in all this, because obviously it has veto power at the Security Council.
Well, you see, what Trump said is predetermined assessment or an opinion. So was that of Modi. It is only the Security Council which has to investigate into this, or to talk to the two parties and determine whether it constitutes a threat to peace and stability, which is its responsibility. This does constitute a threat to peace and stability. Security Council, by the way, for your information, meets at any time of day and night. I have served in the UN, and many a times we have been called up in the middle of the night to meet for some issue. In those days, the Lebanon issue was at its height. So I am saying that the Security Council is a recourse which in any case we should undertake, and then we have to take action. That I will not be able to offer an opinion. I think that will be determined by our military authorities, because this is what is done when such a situation arises.
We'll be back after the break. We'll have continued coverage from myself and Waqar, as we're here with this live coverage of the violation in Kashmir. Do stay with us.
Stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. We're still here at Indus News in a special live coverage of what's happened this morning at dawn there across the line of control, I should say, by the Indian actions of intruding into that area. Of course, Pakistan's military announced that earlier through a tweet through Major General Asif. The Indians, of course, have their own narrative through all this, but Pakistan has shown pictures and evidence of the fact that there has been no damage, no casualties through these Indian actions that have occurred. Nevertheless, it is a dangerous escalation, Joseph, and we know that there has been a meeting that has taken place with the Prime Minister in attendance.
Absolutely, and I think the thing is, it's trying to get real clarity now. We know, as you mentioned rightly from General Ghafoor's tweet, that we have some clarity that there's aircraft involved, it was crossed.
Yeah.
But I think it's what's next and what was the inner details and the technicalities of the violation in terms of, what was the achievement? Was it a hasty drop of the payload as they suggest?
Yeah.
And I think that's what everyone's looking for clarity on now, isn't it really? Where is this going to go diplomatically? And of course, viewers, just to remind you, over the last couple of weeks following the Pulwama incident in occupied Kashmir, the line out of Islamabad from the Prime Minister, from Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has been consistent. Pakistan wants peace with India, it wants dialogue. And
the Prime Minister has asked for, show us the evidence, Let's be transparent about all this. You can't just accuse another nation of, of such a, you can't just make such a large accusation against anybody without any evidence.
And I think that the biggest struggle right now is the lack of clarity coming out of India as well, because there's mixed media reports, some suggestive that Prime Minister Narendra Modi was present in a situation room with his defence minister, with his national security advisor, and that somehow some of the members of the Indian Defence Ministry weren't aware of the planned violation. So it's not too clear now where we're going to head from here. We've had some great guests so far, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Diplomats, former foreign ministers suggesting that perhaps diplomatically the next move is to take it to the UN.
Which makes complete sense because, at this point in time, Pakistan has a consistent stance. And its reaction even now, Foreign Minister Qureshi's statement, was actually quite a calm statement. He's told the Indians don't test us, obviously, but that's obviously a legitimate, logical stance. And as we know, Prime Minister Imran Khan had, in fact, put the military on high alert and said, listen, you can respond as you see fit without needing, to come back to me. So at this point in time, we're waiting to see how Pakistan reacts, but so far the reaction has been very calm, and that's been, of course, a consistent Pakistani stance throughout any such provocations.
The only official line we've seen out of India so far has come from the foreign minister over there through the ANI news agency. But that is really lacking in any clarity. They're suggesting that somehow there were casualties in this assault, that there was, terror camps that were taking out, and yet that is the complete contrast to everything that Pakistan has said. They've said we've got nothing to hide, we don't want any conflict.
Yeah.
It's very clear that this attack in Pulwama was arranged and undone by indigenous Indian-occupied Kashmiris. Yep. So it's, we need a lot more clarity on what is the Indian agenda. We'll try and get some clarity. We're joined by Indus News' Islamabad correspondent, Essa Naqvi. Essa, very good to have you with us on the show. Essa, we understand that Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan and members of the ISPR and other senior military officials have been meeting to try and get clarity now on and decisive action on what Pakistan's next moves are. Could you bring us up to speed, if possible?
Yeah, soon after this, the reports of Indian intrusion into the Pakistani airspace was reported, and it was highlighted on media as well. A high-level meeting was chaired by a Prime Minister in his office in Islamabad, which was attended by all the services chiefs and DG military operations, along with the Ministers of Defense and Foreign Affairs. And the DGMO and Foreign Minister briefed the meeting, the participants of the meeting, about the recent happenings and a situation between Pakistan and India. And a press release after the meeting is being awaited but our sources have confirmed that the Foreign Minister briefed the meeting of his recent interactions with his Japanese, Italian, Sri Lankan, and German counterparts, and the letter that he has written to the United Nations Secretary General, and also his the upcoming meeting of the OIC. And now this is what is being confirmed by official sources, that detailed briefing by the Director General of Inter-Services Public relations is being planned to give and brief the media about the recent situation of what exactly happened and how it happened at the Muzaffarabad sector.
So Issa, tell us, because I know you've been following this from the moment that this incursion occurred there across the LOC. Tell us about what details you have about how this may have played out and what's been spoken of there in the Pakistani capital as far as the situation goes at this point.
The Pakistani version that has come from the Foreign Office of Pakistan and the ISPR is that some of the aircrafts violated the Pakistani airspace, and they violated it by 4 to 5 kilometers at the Muzaffarabad sector. And due to the fact that Pakistani Air Force was at high alert and just anticipating a swift response by the Pakistani Air Forces, the Indian aircrafts, they left the payload at near the border, the line of control, and they went back. So it was an intrusion. It was a clear violation of Pakistani airspace, but more details are being awaited.
Obviously, Issa, you are well rehearsed in the corridors of power there in Islamabad. What is your feeling? What's the reaction you're feeling from colleagues, from government sources? What do you envisage to be the kind of next step now? Is it all about dialogue, or what are you sensing?
The fact that Pakistan just offered India a help in investigation, and if there is some actionable evidence that is provided by India to Pakistan regarding any of the involvement of any people, individuals, or organizations that were involved in the Pulwama incident, then Pakistan is ready to take an action. So now this is an open offer coming directly from the Prime Minister of Pakistan to the state of India. And India has not reciprocated to the statement by the Pakistani Prime Minister. But shortly after this statement, there was a meeting, high-level meeting in Islamabad, which not just offered investigations, joint investigations to India, but also sought evidence, if there is some evidence available that can be used to help track down the people. If somebody is involved from Pakistani soil, Pakistan is ready to take action. Now, what we see at the moment is that it's an escalation, a high tension between India and Pakistan. And since, because of this very fact, the escalation between India and Pakistan, that Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, he was due to visit Japan on 24th of February, but he postponed his visit. And while he was in Islamabad, he has contacted the regional powers. He spoke with the Chinese foreign minister. He spoke with the Sri Lankan foreign minister. He spoke with some of the foreign ministers from Western countries as well.
We're just going to cut in. I do apologize for interrupting your train of thought there. We're just going to add a voice to this conversation to get further analysis on this. Joseph, we're now joined by retired Major General Mohammed Mansha, who I was speaking to a bit earlier as well. Earlier today. General Mansha, thanks for joining us once again here at Indus News to share your insight with us. I know you have a busy schedule, so appreciate your time, of course. How do you feel, General Mansha, that this briefing may have gone at this point in time with the military, with the Prime Minister? What do you think that conversation may have been like?
First of all, it's a very clear an act of aggression what the Indians have initiated, and that is with a purpose that we all have been discussing, that is misguide the world opinion, that is to distract them from the freedom fighters in the Kashmir, and then to have some kind of their domestic public for the electioneering. But what the Pakistan government is going to do, what the military forces are going to do, I will just suggest from hereafter, we are actually getting into the war media zone, and the war is no more like a support to have any kind of a live coverage. The government has retreated, armed forces have retreated, that they will initiate a response, and that will be a very, very potent response. That should be left not to any kind of a suggestions by the analysts or by the media. We should be analyzing what the Indians can possibly do. We should be more focusing is exposing this act of aggression at the international level to all the, that is the world community. And we should be waiting and we should be bridging any kind of a cracks which we have at home. That is, the entire nation should be now prepared to stand like a one man behind the armed forces, behind the civilian government, and whatever act they initiate, we all must support. We must be all ready to sacrifice. We must be prepared to take any kind of the adverse conditions which might we face during any such. We have to, that is, reflect that resolve, that we are ready to sacrifice and we are ready to defend ourselves, and we will go to any limits. That is what should be the theme, and that is what should be the discussion. What comes out from the announcement of the, that is the meeting which was, I think we all must wait, and we must not be making any guesses about it, because this is not something, these things are now something getting into a very, very serious zone. And we cannot be just guessing what can happen and what should happen, because all those who are at the helm of affairs, they are much more informed and they have much more insight into the issues. And I'm sure they are going to come out with some very, very cohesive, very potent and a very, very logical response. They have they dealt with the situation so far in a very, very mature manner and in a very cool, collected manner.
But if I may, I just want to put the focus back now to history, really, because and to get your perspective as an expert, really, on what you foresee Modi's agenda to be here, because we're seeing now that in Indian-occupied Kashmir, freedom struggle leaders are having their homes raided. We've seen an awful lot of youth martyred in the previous weeks. And let us not forget, and to remind our viewers, that if we go back in history to the facts of history of what offices Modi has held, he was, of course, the chief minister of Gujarat during the Gujarat massacres of Muslims there. Is this just an extension of a right-wing, extreme, anti-Muslim agenda in Indian politics, and we're just seeing this played out now through warfare?
The kind of extension, and should we take it, then they are going to extend it further. And this is now or never. And we must check it, and check it very firmly and very forcefully. That is, they should not be allowed any kind of such acts of aggressions. And I'm sure they will be checked. And I fully appreciate what you are anticipating is this is a kind of their expansion of their designs.
General Mansha, one of the interesting things that occurred today has been that, the Indian Foreign Secretary in the press conference that he held, when he made those many various claims that have been, of course, there are allegations at this point because they're all unproven, but he made a lot of allegations, and then he had to leave the press conference early because journalists kept asking probing and, specific questions, and he had no answers for them. That's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? India sort of caught off guard by its own actions. What do you make of that, General?
As you say, that anything which doesn't have, which is not seen through and through, and which is not supported through logic, that is bound to invite such kind of embarrassments, because there would be certain disconnections somewhere, and the whole scenario which they're trying to develop, it is neither logical nor it is actually which is materializing. They're trying to just paint picture here and there, and that is the reason they have to, I'm sure, face the embarrassment. And I have no doubt what kind of what they just tried to initiate an act of aggression. They will also feel sorry about it, because they are triggering a very, very, that is, hot spot in the region. They are going to challenge the peace of the entire region, and maybe not the region, entire world.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's a very contrasting issue, really, isn't it, this one? Because diplomacy is one seeking to seek peace with India, and meanwhile we're seeing this act of aggression. What do you foresee now happening in terms of the policy of Pakistan? Do you think this is going to shift Prime Minister Imran Khan and his administration's consistent policy that they want peace? He's been very clear on that pre-election, post taking the position of Prime Minister. Do you think we're going to see any shift in policy regardless of this response that they're going to come up with?
I think the policy of Pakistan government has been very clear, and that is very well stated. That is, we are looking for peace. We are for any kind of, and we are ready to go to any length to cooperate for the promotion of peace. But peace is always ensured, that is through your effective defense. Should your enemy know that you have some weakness and they can exploit that, then certainly the peace is not guaranteed. We have to ensure that any kind of aggression, should they initiate, that will be met with very, very potent resistance, and the damage inflicted to the Indian would be beyond them to accept it.
Absolutely. Well, this will be an interesting topic to really continue to follow, won't it, Waqar? I mean,
yes,
there's so many developments, things are changing hour by hour.
Yes, and we're of course waiting for that statement to come out of that meeting that Imran Khan, Prime Minister of Pakistan, of course, attended, as well as, of course, military officials. That we're not trying to, of course, prejudge what may come out of that meeting. We're going to have to wait and see, because, of course, this is a sensitive time, Joseph.
It's very
we don't want to make any statements either way. We're going to wait and see what the officials here in Pakistan do declare and decide upon, since this Indian incursion occurred there across the line of control this morning. Stay with us, though. We'll be back after a short break.
Hello and welcome back to Indus News' special live coverage with myself, Joseph Hayat, and my esteemed colleague Waqar Rizvi, as we bring you the latest on this violation that occurred just before dawn this morning beyond the line of control over Pakistan airspace. What occurred is Indian Air Force jets, reportedly meant to be Mirage 2000s, but that's yet to be verified, but at least one or more aircraft crossed beyond the line of control and dropped bombs close to the village of Balakot. Now, this is an uninhabited area. Fortunately, there were no casualties or loss of life reported at this time.
It's interesting. A lot of people have brought up a number of factors that may have contributed to the situation, and of course some of those are domestic Indian politics. I believe we now have Ambassador Najamuddin Sheikh with us to give us further analysis on this. He's a former ambassador himself. Ambassador Sheikh, thanks for joining us here at Indus News on this very important day. Ambassador Sheikh, how do you react to what has occurred this morning there across the line of control?
Well, I think this was, in one sense, it was to be expected in the light of what Modi wants to be able to do at home. It's unfortunate that it has happened with India being invited to the meeting of the OIC, and with other noises being made by Mr. Modi during his last speech, which seemed to suggest that he was recalling Imran Khan's, Prime Minister Imran Khan's meeting with him and suggesting that perhaps there would be a way to resume a dialogue. Now I think the dialogue is going to be more difficult, but it is going to be more imperative, and that is what you're going to get as a message from the United Nations Security Council, from the European Union, from the Americans, and from every other quarter that you can think of, because there is nothing which is more concerning to the world than the fact that India and Pakistan are in an armed confrontation. So let us see what happens, but at the moment I think I would like to see what emerges from the foreign minister's meeting with his old ambassadors and old foreign secretaries, to see what sort of plan of action they come up with.
Ambassador Sheikh, for those that have just tuned in, or perhaps if anyone is a little bit uninformed on this case, it could be fair to say that it appears as a minor issue from the outside, but in fact it isn't the case, is it? Because this is the first aerial violation of Pakistan's airspace by the Indian Air Force since 1971. So this is a pretty big deal, isn't it?
It's a pretty big deal, because air violations that have been in the past, and many such air violations have taken place, but not with the claim that they have dropped 1,000-kilogram bombs at a target which is well beyond the line of control. Balakot is at least 40 kilometers or more from the line of control. And it's clearly an act of aggression. It's no matter that they talk about it as a non-military preemptive strike, but that's verbiage. The fact of the matter is that it's clear-cut aggression against an international border. It's not even something that you could say was confined to the line of control or the disputed territory of Jammu and Kashmir. This went straight into Pakistan's sovereign territory.
Now, coming in just now is the President of Pakistan, Arif Alvi, has been speaking in Islamabad, and in that he's been expressing his support for the armed forces, as well as highlighting what is important for Pakistan moving forward. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
Today, let me tell you that the resolve of the armed forces of Pakistan has been very strong. This is the armed force which has stopped terrorism. This is a message beyond this audience. My armed forces have stopped terrorism. My armed forces are the most experienced as far as terrorism is concerned. My armed forces can teach the world how to handle it. They've laid down their lives on doing this. So let nobody in the region or anywhere else even think about the fact they can harm my country. We are a people protected by our armed forces, and we know how to protect our nation. We don't have any bad intention to any other country. But we know how to defend ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Today,
Quite a strong statement there by President Alvi, Joseph. And, you know, he's speaking about, and at the end, I think that was the most appropriate statement, the strongest part of the statement, in fact. He said, you know, we have no bad intention to any other country, really. Joined by another guest, just to provide a bit more analysis to the situation, Joseph, we're joined now by Brigadier retired Imran Malik, who is joining us. Brigadier Malik, we appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule to speak to us today. What did you make of Indian actions today in the morning, Brigadier Malik?
All right, thank you very much for taking me on the program. I think this was something which was not entirely unexpected, and Pakistan was expecting it. You see, Mr. Modi is now in such a position that he has taken brinkmanship to a very, very high level. And this brinkmanship is likely to come out with some very serious consequences as well. They have carried out a violation of the LOC, but they have also indicated their own actual feeling about the whole thing. They have called it a non-military preemptive strike. One really can't define that or interpret what do they mean by that. Do they want to convey the message that since it has not targeted military installations or military personnel, therefore the Pakistan military forces should not react? This has the same footprints and the same, it is on the same lines as the so-called imaginary surgical strike. When after having claimed that strike, they said that this is all that we are going to do and we are not going to do anything beyond this. Again, literally asking the Pakistan armed forces not to react. So I personally think that Mr. Modi, in his obsession to get elected as the next Prime Minister of India, he has taken brinkmanship to a very high level. And I would be very seriously concerned about the whole thing. And I would, as a matter of fact, want to analyze one thing, that if Pakistan were to react and respond in the same manner, in a military manner, by crossing the line of control and carrying out a strike somewhere, what will be the reaction of Mr. Modi? Will he then be able to absorb all that? Or will he want to go out for an all-out war? So this brinkmanship has brought us to a place where, although one would suggest that we should have a very measured and a very mature and a very stable sort of a response, nevertheless, maintaining the Pakistani nation's morale and upkeeping our self-pride, our self-dignity, our self-respect, and our national pride above all, I think Pakistan must respond in kind, while undertaking a diplomatic offensive as well as a media offensive at the same time.
Okay, Brigadier Malik, I think we're going to have to leave it at that. I do apologize for cutting in to saying, but of course we sincerely appreciate the time that you've allotted for us out of your busy schedule, no doubt, for sharing your insight and analysis, of course, on this very important issue. Joseph, let's just run down for our viewers what's occurred today. We know that at dawn, according to Major General Asif, who is the spokesperson of the Pakistani military, he said that there was an incursion across the line of control, that and there's various estimates of how many aircraft there were that came across, but a number of aircraft, we can say, came across, Indian aircraft that is, that they essentially had to flee, and while they were fleeing, they dropped a number of payloads. Thankfully, of course, in an unpopulated area where there was no casualties and damage.
And we've seen Foreign Office Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi respond with a statement in this morning. There's ongoing conversations between the DG, ISPR and the Cabinet. We're expecting a response from Prime Minister Imran Khan later today. But it's clear this is a developing situation. It's one that will continue. It's one that's been going on for several weeks now since the Pulwama incident. But the message remains clear. Pakistan is seeking, for now at least, a diplomatic solution and diplomatic progress, including what was lodged with the UN. But be sure to stay tuned to Indus News for all the latest developments, starting at the top of the hour with the headlines. Thanks for joining us.